Hey, good morning, everybody. It is Tuesday, and it's 8 o'clock in the morning on the East Coast. It is March 10th, and we are here at the Jason Falls Show. Welcome to the Jason Falls Show. That makes me your host, Jason Falls. As always, for that, my apologies. But we're going to have a good show today because today we're going to take a necessary walk through the pathway of photography of our lives and our work with Christina Hawatmeh of Scopio. She is the founder and CEO of probably a relatively new stock photography startup. They've been around for a couple of years now, but they offer what they call a reimagination of what you can expect from a stock photography resource. I'm interested to dive into what they bring to the table, but also talk with her on some important reminders for all of us on intellectual property usage, diversity in the images we use, and so on. So we're going to also talk about how they incorporate artificial intelligence into what they do. So we're going to learn some fun things today, focused mostly on the topic of online images and photography. So getting a little reminder for those of us who know a little bit about it and some new information for those of us who don't. And obviously this applies to everyone, businesses, small and large. Also on the show, I'd like to spend a few minutes today to talk to you a little bit about PR. I know a lot of you understand public relations, but some conversations with some folks recently reminded me that there are some simple, mechanisms that we can use in business like PR that people simply don't understand. And so I want to make sure we kind of go over that so that we can sort of advocate forward to the people that we work with so that they can better understand what we in the marketing world do and what is possible and what isn't possible. So we'll go over that as well. But first, we've talked about a bunch of ways brands and organizations have used Switcher Studio here on this show in the past, but I want you to think more broadly about what the opportunities are for leveraging live streaming and software that makes it very user and watcher friendly. Switcher Studio is the software that makes our live stream of our Tuesday interview recordings look like a professional TV studio. And in producing this thing, it's just me, an iPad, and Switcher Studio. So I'll give you the informal. If you're watching on the live stream, here's what I'm doing. I've got my iPad up and I've got a bunch of screens. You can see very tiny. There's Christina waiting in the green room, if you will, to come on the show. And I just hit the button and camera things pop up. And so like I can do this and bring my name up on the screen. Oh, of course I said that. I didn't do it. I can do this and bring my name up on the screen so you can see that I'm Jason Falls from Cornet and all that good stuff. It all happens because of Switcher Studio. Now, I'm in a user group on Facebook for those of us who use the software. We can ask questions, share ideas, and such. And I found a man recently named Jack Schoon, I think is how you pronounce his name. He did his first Switcher Studio powered live stream not too long ago by streaming a public meeting in Tantalon, Nova Scotia, where a room full of citizens discussed and debated open net fish farming, which is obviously a big issue there. Now, I don't know anything about this issue, but think about the power of this. It looked like a few hundred people were packed into this public meeting to the point others may want to participate but not have a seat. Jack live streamed it so other members of the community could hear the pros and cons, and certainly people who were disabled or elderly and couldn't get to the meeting wanted to be able to potentially watch and participate too. So he live streamed it so other members of the community could hear the pros and cons, become more informed on the issue. That's using the technology we have at hand to make a real impact in the world. So I'm going to go over to the live stream now. We got to assume the live stream's working, but I'm going to go over to the live stream on LinkedIn now and drop a link into the chat section there so that you can see his video in action. It does look like the technology is working for us today, so thank goodness for that. So I'm going to drop a link over there so you can go see that video from Jack whenever you get a chance. And I'll put that in the show notes as well for those of you listening on the recording on the podcast. Jack is putting citizens and voters who won't or can't make it to public meetings on important issues in the room so they can make informed decisions and learn about issues their vote may affect. That is outstanding. Thank you for doing that, Jack, not just for Nova Scotia, but for those who will inspire to do the same by telling that story. So go live, tell your stories, and connect your community. Look professional without all those big production costs. Go to switcherstudio.com/falls. Make sure you use that URL, switcherstudio.com/falls. There you can start a free 2-week trial. After your trial, you can use the code FALLS and get 10% off your subscription for as long as you have it. That's for life, 10% for life. As long as you don't cancel, you get 10% forever. They could raise their price to $1 billion a month, and well, you're going to save 10% of that. You may not have 90% of $1 billion a month to spend at some point, but nonetheless, you're going to get the discount as long as you don't cancel. So Switcher Studio, they make our live recordings of this very podcast look professionals, and I'll let them do the same for your live streaming at that wonderful URL there, switcherstudio.com/falls. And if you are dialing into the live recording of the podcast on LinkedIn, you can jump over to the comment section and ask questions and interact with us here on the show. If you have questions for Christina or questions of me, you can jump in. And I'm looking at the technology permitting today, and it is permitting today. So I see some people in there. I don't necessarily see any comments yet, but I'm assuming I'll just refresh because normally that doesn't comments start to pop up. But yep, here they are. There they are. Jessica Moore at the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce says, good morning. Hello, Jessica. I promise we're going to reschedule our coffee drink, whatever the hell we're doing. We keep getting interrupted. So we'll do that at some point. But anyway, so I see Jessica Moore in there. I also see Barbara Hannon, who's back in. She joins us almost every week. Thank you, Barbara, for coming by. Scott Waganass is back again. He is the Associate State Director for Communications and Outreach for the AARP of Kentucky. So thank you for stopping by, Scott. So we've got some New York, we've got some Kentucky, and I'm sure we're going to have some more here in a bit. Now, let's get right to the topic at hand of the day, which is imagery and images. Do you have a stock photography place you go when you're looking for a sterile white guy posing with his coat over his shoulder, looking off into the distance, so you can make people seeing your website or PowerPoint slide think that they're all inspired? Yes, you do. We all do. And that's part of the problem. And part of the solution is Christina Hawatmeh, who is here. She is the founder of and CEO of Scopio, the largest library of authentic photos for stock photography powered by AI. She's here today to help us with some new information and remind us of some old information we need to revisit from time to time about photography. Christina, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Jason. Thanks for having me. And don't forget the photo of the girl eating salad. That's a little more epic than the other one.
That's true. The reason that I used that reference was I was putting together a slide the other day and I was looking for an inspirational photo. And unfortunately, the white guy with his coat over his shoulders on my computer. So I deleted it immediately.
Great. Well, we'll replace it for you. Don't worry.
So stock photography resources are pretty plentiful out there. There's lots of different sites, but I think we've all had some fun at their expense in the business world because the poses are often very sterile, contrived. So there's certainly room for improvement. There's got to be a deeper story behind why you would dive into this mess and build a company around it. So what is Scopio's story?
Sure. So the reason why all those images are posed is that stock photography was made in an era of print magazines where there were only a few businesses that needed a few images. So they were highly produced, and that was what that world demanded at that time. But now we have millions of businesses, tons of new ones starting every day. Small businesses, individuals, inspiration projects that need great, amazing images to power their storytelling. Everybody knows the great photo is what catches your attention, or the great photo is what inspires your campaign or your idea for something. But access to that has been really hard, and licensing is another issue. So once you combine both of those, it's kind of funny when you look at it, because every year we take more photos than in all of history combined. And they just sit on our phones and they sit on our cameras, and you see like 14-year-old girls out in the street with their amazing Canons, and they're taking their images and they're just sitting there. But the world is like craved to move that content into the rest of the world, online, on TV, on billboards, wherever you turn. Walk into a restaurant, you see a photo on the wall. Every images are all around us. So Scopio's goal is to be the middle person between this great world of 4 billion photos that we post every day on social media, and all the new businesses and existing businesses that, are really looking for something that's really fresh, diverse, authentic, global, and almost local in a way. So something that represents where they are.
So I know you started out in with an interest in politics. I know you went to Columbia. You interned in Congress. I don't know if that's something to brag about these days, but what led you professionally to do this? My guess is you're not necessarily a coder, but of course I'm guessing. I'm making assumptions here. How'd you get to be an entrepreneur and the CEO of an up and coming company like this?
Yeah, it was kind of by accident, but my passion has been there for years about the intersection between technology and politics. So that's why I went to Columbia to study that, how governments interact with people online. And then when I was there, I had this kind of aha moment in the lobby of the School of International Public Affairs. Then I saw TV, and there was these photos from Twitter, and they were trying to explain where they were from. And I was like, why is everyone so confused? Like, why can't I just organize these photos, let everybody know where they're from, and they can just browse through them casually without panicking that the image was going to go away? So I started to learn how to code and find partners and figure out how to build a system that could kind of clean out the mess of these images and make them sensible for people. And then when I figured out how to do that in some part, I realized, you know what, distribution is also just as exciting, if not more. And then how do we get these in the hands of people that want to use them? So that's where Scopio is a place where you can license your images, and then we distribute them for you and make sure that everything is signed off and okay to use.
So artificial intelligence is something that your company sort of, claims to use that to power what you do. So take me through how AI helps your library of photographs grow, stay organized, produce relevant results for what people are looking for.
Yeah, so on the photographer's perspective, like, you might find selling your photos really intimidating because it was made for professional photographers. Most sites you go, you have to add your own tags, your own information. You have to understand what a model release is, what licensing is, and these are all things that are not native to, especially like a younger generation. So we wanted to make a frictionless way in which you could sell your images without having to know all of those things. So when you go to Scopio, you submit your image, and then we take you through automated model release links. We tag and title your image for you. We curate that content. We make sure there's nothing in the image that isn't allowed to be sold, and then we put that up for you. So you just spend less than 3 minutes submitting, and then we take care of that. And then also on the sourcing side, from that inspiration idea that I had mentioned, we learned how to filter through content. So if you're submitting like a bunch of photos of, I don't know, the coffee table, we're not going to take that. And that's how we filter through when we're finding photographers, and then also when they're in our system. So if you think about it, photography is having its heyday. So it's funny, even in the tags, when you look at it, the AI systems that were built are completely biased. So it'll look at, like, sometimes if a man has long braids, it'll call it a woman.
Mm.
So it's completely gendered. There's so many issues, not just in the processing of content that we've developed, and Scopio really wants to take us forward with that.
So tell me a bit. I know you've got kind of two audiences, or two primary audiences for this tool. You have the users, obviously, people like us in the marketing world who need stock photography from time to time or need to source images somewhere. And then you have the marketplace of photographers who want to create images for you,
Yeah.
and sell those and manage their licensing and rights there. So break those two down and kind of the business model down. How much do people have to pay for the platform? What role do the photographers play, and how can they leverage the platform too?
Yeah, so the goal on the photographer side is to be the go-to place wherever you are around the world to sell your images. If you think about it, the whole world is online. The world should have images to choose from that look like them, act like them, feel like them. So now we have 13,000 photographers from over 150 countries, and we do have that breadth of diversity. If you go to the website, you'll see more than 200,000 photos that have been submitted from them. They get paid a percentage of every sale, whether it's a subscription or an individual image purchase. And then on the buyer side, we have thousands of businesses that use Scopio either on the subscription or on individual images. And the subscription, we created a special one for small businesses and individuals. That's $30 a month, unlimited, right now, to access to part of the library. And that has really powered things from full-on Spotify albums to front to back cover Amazon books. People have launched Etsy stores. They've created apps and games. They've really taken their inspiration to new places. And we knew that there was a flood of people that were dying to get their inspiration through this. And even inspiration boards, just downloading, you can save images, create boards and ideas. And that's probably the funnest part, as you know, as a marketer. So those are the two worlds that are colliding here. And it's, in a sense, we're just lowering the barriers. So now these creatives with talent can meet these great businesses. We've even had photographers make it to the cover of books at Barnes and Nobles. And they'll be this, a photographer from a town in a country that would never otherwise have the opportunity. So we're leveling that playing field and giving anyone an opportunity to get there.
So when a photographer uploads their images, I imagine they have the opportunity to control the rights and licensing, so that if an image does make it to the cover of a Barnes and Noble book, is it set, or can they set it so that they can make a reasonable amount of money off of that versus, I'm going to make, half of 2 cents of the person's subscription who subscribed to the thing to do this?
Yeah. So it depends on the licensing rights that the buyer is purchasing. So if it's a big company like yours and they're using it for a billboard, that photographer will make like above $1,000. If they're using it for a small business subscription, then they'll make less. So it's a sliding scale, and it's in it for the long run. It's not like going to the casino, putting your images up and seeing how much they're going to make. It takes some time, but it also provides you more opportunities to get noticed. And most of the people on our platform are amateurs, or they may have 50,000 followers, 100,000 followers on Instagram, but they've never actually sold an individual image before.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, my guess is the vast majority of the images that people use online or source online that they didn't take, so grabbing a picture off a Google search or even from a stock photography company, but also snatching a picture that someone else posted, the vast majority are not properly licensed. So there's a lack of permission, there's a lack of remuneration, and so on. So for a dumb guy like me, or someone who's a blogger or an Instagrammer or a Twitter user who doesn't understand what that all means, take us through that intellectual property spiel and the reasons that you need to be really cognizant of image licensing before using one.
Yeah, so there's billions of dollars of copyright infringement cases a year. Most of them happen through Google. So you're going and you're thinking a Google image, like it could be of a fruit basket, and you're just using a photo of grapes that really means nothing to you. And it doesn't really matter what size business you are. The issue is that once that has reversed to your website, you're the owner, and then you're responsible for it. I have a friend that had to screenshot his bank account to get out of one of those lawsuits. So it's really like a dangerous play, especially for small businesses that really don't want to get in trouble. They're just starting. Like, it's the last thing that you want to deal with. Even as a big business, it's horrible for the person that made that decision in the business. Then they get in trouble with their boss. So that's where licensing and these big companies that everybody knows that goes to, that's why they prefer to go there, to make sure that things are okay and licensed. So it's not just the owner of the photo that we check for, but it's also the people within the photo. So if Jason takes a photo of me, I need to say okay.
Yep.
Because me and Jason could get in a fight, and then I don't want to sell my photo anymore. Hopefully we wouldn't, but we might.
Trust me, you'd win.
I might. So you need the permissions, and you need the permissions of any buildings, like the Burj Khalifa in Dubai is one of those. The Eiffel Tower is one of those buildings where you need to have those permissions. So it's better safe than sorry. But the free images that people use generally don't have any human subjects in them. Mm-hmm. So that's gonna also tear away from the story that you want to tell, because we're all human at the end of the day, and we want to feel with a real story.
So is a good portion of your team's energy spent on policing those images, or I'm imagining there's some sort of, that's one of your layers of artificial intelligence, but how big of a problem is dealing with it from the technology perspective?
So people that submit are generally like truthful. They agree and they say this is my image that I took, and then they have to get their permissions for the people in the photo by sending links. So we can usually check that way. It's generally if the person's just saying that they took it and they weren't. Sometimes if somebody's in the photo, they think that they're the owner of the photo, but the person that took the photo is the owner of the copyright. Scopio leaves the copyright to the photographer, so we don't take that from you. So the copyright remains with the photographer, and we have non-exclusive images too, which make it easier. So as a photographer, you can go and you can sell that image again, or you can keep it for yourself too.
So diversity is another issue that your company Scopio uses in a lot of its marketing and taglines and whatnot. So that's something that you're sort of engineered your catalog around. I wanted to ask you specifically about that. What needed to change, or what did your company do differently to address that particular challenge in the stock photography world?
So the staged shoots concept is usually where this comes up, because you have to hire a model. It gets expensive. So you go to places like maybe Eastern Europe, and then you hire those models. So then everybody starts to look like that because you're lowering costs. But again, meanwhile, people are already producing this content. So we're not going out and asking them for that. So they're able to shoot their friends, their moms, their loved ones, and then we use that. So I think that by itself is a whole different production system that is allowing for diversity. And then what we really mean is like the global nature of it, because again, the internet is flat a little bit, and we don't need to use photos that were like made, next door to us. Mm-hmm. So that diversity is important. And giving people a platform. These amateurs, these people, they don't find the bigger stock sites accessible for them. They don't feel like they represent them. And that's where Scopio, wants to make everybody feel comfortable to submit. If you're, a mom and you took a great photo of your daughter and you just wanted more people to be able to use that, then, why not be able to do that? You shouldn't have to change your profession to do that. So I think that's where the diversity comes up. And then it's also a big pain point because, people really want images that look like them, that feel like them, and they feel like they're not a part of it either. So on both sides, you've alienated the photographers and you've alienated buyers. So that's what Scopio is aiming to solve for.
Very
and
good.
I've already started.
I know that your business partner, I think I wanted to turn to one last subject here before I let you go. Your business partner is at least at one point in her life guilty of texting and bicycling. And so I want to give you the opportunity to give a PSA out there to people to not do that.
Yes, that's the photo on our About Us page. You can find a really funny photo, but my business partner, she's the creative and the product person, and she was like browsing ideas while she was bicycling in New York City, browsing the web, not texting. That's the worst part.
Yeah.
And she fell and she broke her shoulder, and it was really, it's tough because she's always on the computer. So she had to take it easy, but I think just be safe, walk. We get really like stuck on our phones in tech, especially if you're in tech, you're always looking at a device all the time.
Well, I'm glad it wasn't
30 under 30, actually.
Yeah.
She's feeling good.
I'm glad it wasn't driving a car. That's good. But still, if you're browsing the internet intentionally while operating a vehicle of some sort, probably not a good idea.
Yeah, especially in a busy area. Got to be bicycles. You have to be careful.
So, Christina, tell businesses and the people out there listening where they can find Scopio and what they need to do to access your images, and then tell people where they can find you and/or Scopio on the interwebs.
Perfect. So Scopio stands for Scope It Out. The website is scop.io. You can find us on Instagram at Scopio Images, and you can message me personally if you like this on LinkedIn. My name again is Christina Hawatmeh.
Very good. And I've pasted the links all of those links over there in the chat session on LinkedIn, and we'll also make sure those are in the show notes as well. Christina, thank you so much for getting up early on a Tuesday with us. I appreciate your time.
Anytime, Jason.
All right. That is Christina Hawatmeh of Scopio. Great to have her on the show and learn from her. And, licensing of images is one thing that a lot of us don't think about. We say, oh, just go do a Google image search and grab something that will work. And that might be okay if you're using it for some sort of internal presentation that's not going to leave the walls of your building. But if you're taking that presentation out to clients, or certainly if you're doing it in front of an audience at a conference, or you're putting something up on SlideShare or posting something on the internet using that image, that photographer has those rights, and you need to make sure that you're crossing that T and dotting those I's to make sure that the people who produce that content get paid for it. And it's certainly something that damages and hurts the individual artist in this particular case. And in the creative world, almost everything we do is anchored on the art and creativity of the production staffs and the creative teams that we use, whether they be in-house or freelancers. So let's make sure that we're supporting them appropriately. Even if you're just doing PowerPoint presentations for new business pitches and whatnot, go sign up to Scopio or whatever stock image photography place you want that will allow you to purchase licensed photography. Scopio's catalog is pretty interesting. I love the fact that they're sourcing things mostly from amateurs and sourcing things in much more diverse, non-posed photo session type ways. It gives you a much more interesting thing to look at. So looking over on the chat room, a couple other people have joined us today. Terry Tate is here. Good morning, Terry. Good to see you in the session. And Parth Beleni is here as well. So Parth, thanks for stopping by today. In addition to the folks that we mentioned earlier, if you have a question or comment or anything you want to jump in, please do. We appreciate you coming by the live version of the show here on LinkedIn. Of course, if you're listening on the podcast, you can join us on Tuesday mornings at 8 a.m. Eastern, 5 a.m. Pacific time live on LinkedIn to watch the interviews happen as they happen. And you get to be entertained by all of our wonderful video snafus and hiccups and all that good stuff that happen with live video, which is always fun. I edit a lot of the snafus out of the finished audio product, so you can enjoy a little tap dancing sometimes in the morning here on the Jason Fall Show. Okay, so let's revisit public relations a little bit. I think most of you get it. The people who typically listen to this show or watch our live stream are either public relations professionals or marketing professionals who work very closely with PR and know what it is and what it does. But I was actually in a, and just for lack of, for clarity here, public relations in my mind is anything that you're doing with the media. Certainly is one of the primary audiences that you're going to talk to, but also your community and, special interest groups and other stakeholders to try and communicate a message typically in an earned fashion. And what we mean by that is you're not paying for placement. That's advertising. That's a paid placement. And it's not something that you own. It's not owned. It's not paid. It's earned. So you have a relationship. You reach out to people and you say, I need to communicate this message to an audience. And I'm hoping that you will help me communicate that message. If it's a media person and they think that your message is compelling enough, then they'll take that information and they'll write a story about it, do a piece on television, talk about you on their radio show, their podcast, whatever. And that is earned media. You haven't paid for that right to be heard by their audience. They think whatever you have is compelling enough to repeat to their audience. So it's mostly earned media. Now, the lines have blurred because of the advent of social media. And now you've got not the trained journalists running the media out there from top to bottom. It's not all trained journalists who have gone to J school and understand what PR is and that there's a such thing as earned media because the advent of social media put publishing tools in the hands of everyone. And so people who weren't trained were like, well, yeah, I'll talk about your thing if you pay me. And so now all of a sudden those lines have blurred a little bit and you've got Earned media folks like PR and social media people reaching out to influential people. They might be influencers online or they might be media members. And sometimes now the response comes back is, well, you have to pay for that sponsored content or that placement. And so PR people are more often these days than they ever have had to deal with paid placements as well. So the lines are blurring a little bit, but in general, you're talking about earned media placement. So, so I'm talking to a client or talking to some people earlier or last week, I guess it was. And we started having this conversation about PR, and they were very concerned about how much they're going to have to pay the local newspaper, as an example, for them to do a story on them. And so it was very clear to me in that transaction that this particular person that I was talking to, who is in business and is in marketing, didn't quite understand that public relations is not a situation where you pay the reporter or you pay the publication, that it's earned media. And so I thought that that was an interesting sort of trigger. I hadn't heard someone sort of confuse that the status and the difference of PR and advertising in a while. And it surprised me a little bit, but I don't think it should, because in the sort of crazy wild west of our media landscape today, and because social media and influencers and online, social networking influencers have changed the landscape quite a bit, I don't think we should be shocked or surprised by that. As marketing professionals, as PR professionals, I think we need to understand that there are going to be business owners out there. There are even going to be marketing directors out there who don't understand that PR is not about writing a check for placement. It's about, spending the time and the sweat equity to get in front of the people to tell your story in a compelling way so that they think your story is worth telling, whether you're paying them or not. And so I wanted to bring that to your attention because I think as people who are marketers, who are working at agencies or who are working with brands or clients, or maybe talking up the ladder to your C-level folks in your organization, we need to continually reinforce what public relations is, what earned media is, and what our role is in that. Because I think too many times when you say, what would be great is if we were to be able to get the local monthly magazine here in town or in our industry to do a feature story on this, that, or the other, the answer from your executive should never be, well, how much am I going to have to pay for that? The answer should be, well, do we have the PR chops and contacts and whatnot to make that happen? And so let's continue to do a good job of advocating for what we do and making sure that we're educating, both up the ladder, down the ladder, and out to the sides of the colleagues and people that we're working with so that people clearly understand what public relations is. The fact is that many people in business and even in marketing don't really understand how it works because the media landscape has been so blurred. You've got paid, you've got earned, you've got owned. Yes, influencers and some media blur the lines between those two, but your higher ups and your clients shouldn't. And that is on you. That's on us. We've got to continue to have those conversations so that people understand that very clearly. Good morning to Robin Davis Sekulis. She's over in the chat sessions. She is the VP for Communications and Marketing for the Presbyterian Church folks here in Kentucky, in Louisville. And so Robin's a good buddy. Good to have her here. Good morning, Robin. Appreciate you stopping by. And thanks all of you for stopping by on the live stream, or if you're just listening to the download of the podcast when you have a chance later in the day or later in the week. Thank you so much for spending some time with the big show. One last thing I have to remind you about. I'd love to see you in Chicago on April 29th and 30th at the Influencer Marketing Strategy Summit. I've been invited to serve as one of our keynote speakers there, along with Jeff Blair, who is one of our clients here at Cornet. The event is billed as the premier influencer marketing conference to help marketers launch, scale, and measure influencer programs. Jeff and I will be walking people through a fun case study from his efforts over at the University of Healthcare, University of Kentucky healthcare system, where we leveraged influencers of all types to support a storytelling campaign that has reached some pretty impressive proportions. A year later, we're still reaping the benefits of that. The campaign, by the way, just won an Addy Judge's Choice Award here in Lexington, so congrats to the team for that. But the agenda for the event is huge. It's well beyond just the talk that Jeff and I will be giving. Jim Tobin from Carousel is emceeing the event. Other speakers include Betty Ann Schlossberg from Lyft, Lauren Thomas from Southwest Airlines, Gwen Roney from Carhartt, Crystal Duncan from Edelman, Miri Rodriguez from Microsoft. It's a headliner event of people doing the business of influencer marketing. Great people to learn from. The conference is on April 29th and 30th. There's even some pre-conference workshops on the 28th. I think Jeff and I speak on that middle day on the 29th, but the whole thing is fantastic. So make sure you get your tickets. If you go to jason.online/IMS Chicago, that's IMS stands for Influencer Marketing Strategies, IMS, jason.online/IMS Chicago, and use the code Jason15. You'll get a discount off your ticket. I'm dropping that link over in the LinkedIn chat session now so that you can go get that ticket and that discount. I'll put that in the show notes as well. So join Jeff and me at the Influencer Marketing Strategy Summit. There really isn't an event like it out there that focuses on influencer strategies. And I, for one, think that the meat of your marketing future for the next 5 years or so, and maybe beyond, is going to be all about this. Jason.online/IMS Chicago. Use the code Jason15. Next week on the show, Peter Friedman, the Vice President of Marketing for Demdico, will be here. They're an online retailer that designs and sells gift items and products focused on lifting people's spirits. So a very positive show next week, which is always unusual for me. I'm kidding. We're going to talk about the challenges of e-commerce in Amazon's world, how they also serve as a marketplace for artists to sell their wares, and the challenges of that. And I have a little background on the topic, working at Cafe Press once upon a time for a couple of years. So that'll be a fun and fruitful conversation, I'm sure. We'll learn a lot from Peter. Join us for the live recording of that show with the video stream on LinkedIn at 8 a.m. Eastern, 5 a.m. Pacific on next Tuesday. If you can't join us live, the audio recording will hit the podcast feed later that morning. That's next Tuesday, March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. I'll try to wear green, and if I don't, you can pinch me. Live on LinkedIn, or catch the show wherever you get your podcasts. So, with that, that's going to do it for this edition of the Jason Falls Show. If you liked the episode, share it with your networks, or jump over and give us a review on your podcast network of choice. We certainly appreciate that. Look for me on social networks. I'm at jason.online/LinkedIn or /Twitter or wherever. Just search for Jason Falls. Until next time, everyone, I'll see you on the interwebs.